I teach at Glasgow International College, and I'm a module coordinator for statistics. So this course covers a wide range of topics, and is also taken by a wide range of student programs. So we have science and engineering students, and we have social sciences students. And basically what would happen is, it didn't matter what data set I picked for the assessment, none of the students were happy, because if I picked a too sciencey data sets, the social science students were upset. But if I picked a social science one, the science and engineering students weren't too happy either. So I started getting me down this idea of thinking about, okay, why don't we just give students the choice of the data set? But then I started triggered another thought of, hold on, why am I deciding the assessments the way that I do decide them? Is it necessarily fair for me to decide the assessments that the students do, when ultimately it should be up to them to be able to dictate how they demonstrate their understanding of the material? So I think it's no secret that probably assessments is considered one of the most influential factors in student learning. At least from my point of view, that's usually the first questions the students ask me, is how are they going to be assessed? So I think traditionally, all students have been treated equally by all receiving the same assessments. But student cohorts are becoming more diverse. So for us, we have, at least in my institution, we have all international students, but across all higher education, there's more international students, there's more mature students or returning students, and there's students with visible and hidden disabilities. And I think the thing that gets me concerned is I may accidentally pick an assessment type that disadvantages certain groups. And I want to make sure that students are able to have the best outcomes for them. So taking a UDL approach, or Universal Design for Learning approach, if I give all the students the opportunity to choose what suits them best, this allows students to showcase their skills and knowledge in their own terms. So basically, we're trying to give control for the students, how they reach the end goal of their journey. At least for me, and in terms of literature, giving students responsibility of how they learn is good practice of student-centered learning. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting this is all wonderful, because there are many concerns about giving concerns. So, for example, how do you make sure the choices are fair? And also, are there erosions of standards? Because I know that's something that many academics and many educators are passionate about, is making sure that what the students are learning and how they are learning and how they are showing they've learned something is to high quality. So this basically leads us to the provocations. So I've got 3 provocations. So the first one is, for true student-centered learning, students should have the freedom to choose how they are assessed. What is more fair, giving students all the same assessment or allowing students to choose how they are assessed? And does giving students a choice in assessments erode academic standards of the course? Now, what I want us to do is we're going to get put into breakout rooms, and I want us in the breakout rooms to discuss each of these ideas. There's going to be a Padlet where I would like for all of you to contribute your ideas for each of these provocations. You can list out the pros and cons. You don't necessarily have to be for it. I'm still on the journey of trying to figure out how much freedom should we give our students. But before we begin, does anyone have any questions they would like to ask?
Liam, could you put the Padlet link in the chat as well?
Yep.
Just for those on a computer, then they.
Yep. Give me 1 second. They are.
Thank you.
Yep. So if we're able to go into breakout rooms, I think probably just 10 minutes would be enough time just to have a chat and share the ideas about it.
Fine. Okay, we'll come back together at, shall we say 19 minutes past?
Yep.
And there are 24 people, so we could have 6 breakout rooms.
Sure.
And I'll randomly assign everyone. And yeah, if you should see, you should be able to join a breakout room. Hopefully a pop-up window has appeared for you.
Cool. So thank you very much, everybody, for taking part in the conversations. At least in my breakout room, there was lots of brilliant chats and lots of great ideas being thrown out there. I just want to be like totally transparent. This is not something I've done myself. This is more something like from a pedagogical point of view. I think is like absolutely fascinating. But in terms of like practically doing it, is something that I'm wanting to get more feedback on. So if people want to like contribute or like share through the microphone or through the chat, then please feel free to share.
Vicky, how are you?
Hi, Mansoor. You've just joined us at the end of a session there where we're just wrapping up on a discussion about student-centred assessment. So
okay. I'll just keep quiet.
That's great. Just you're very keen to get started, which is good. That's what we need this time.
Okay.
Yeah, Liam, just to feedback, I think we had a conversation about lots of different things. So some of our prompts are on the Padlet, but things like now who was it? I've lost her now, but Janet was talking about the fact that she tried different assessment formats with her students, giving them the opportunity, but they were quite risk averse, and a lot of them stuck to the traditional modes, despite the fact that students who were using the more kind of interactive multimedia approaches were actually doing better in their performance. I think I captured that okay, Janet? Nah. Yeah. And then we were talking about, what's more fair. And then we thought, well, there's a difference between being equal and being equitable, which perhaps other people kind of thought about as well. It's that whole idea of disability, supporting disability as well. And then I think we felt that if there were appropriate guidelines in place, then there wouldn't be an erosion of academic standards. But that was our kind of take on the 3.
No, that's superb. What I was going to say is like, some of the reading that I've attached here, it does go through strategies and like trying to make the choices equitable or like trying to make the choices fair. Because I think that's one of the big concerns is, if I give students like 2 choices of assessments, I want to make sure like the hours that the students put in and the learning outcomes they achieve is all the same. But just how they go about tackling that is something that I'm interested in. Does anybody else want to share?
I can feedback from something we discussed in our group. We were talking about, and I noticed someone else, I think, put it on the Padlet. Students maybe sort of sticking to their comfort zones, and we were talking about how we could. If part of the assessment was to get students to stretch themselves, to have some sort of reflection on why they chose the type of assessment that they did, and sort of encourage them to do something different, and that's actually part of the assessment criteria.
No, thank you. I think it's important to note, and I think the first Padlet, the first provocation, like there are some courses where they do have strict guidelines over what it means. Like, for example, in medicine, you do have to do certain types of assessments. On other types of fields, it is quite strict. So I do understand that this is possibly not something that's feasible for all subjects. Yeah.
So,
Does anyone else?
I can say a couple of things that came up in our group. Well, first was an anecdote that I gave, which was my first degree being a chemistry degree. But it wasn't until I worked for a pharmaceutical company that I realized how much practical was actually involved in chemistry and how much fume cupboard work. And actually, it wasn't all theory, and there was chemicals going everywhere, and it wasn't my cup of tea. So I was saying some of the assessments may not have been suitable for a life as a chemist. But yeah, so that was sounding like more practicals. But I think we were also talking about the difficulties and differences in marking an essay and an oral presentation, whether it be a podcast or a sort of, I don't know, video presentation, because it's so much easier to scan an essay for paragraphs and points that are made rather than listening and re-listening to audio. Yeah, and obviously a presentation, if you're just looking at the slides, is very pared down compared to an essay. So I think the equitable assessment is a real challenge for people who've tried this in the past, and I can certainly imagine it being.
What I was going to say is, like, at Glasgow International College, we don't necessarily give students choice and assessments, but we do allow, for example, for our first year students, they do a project class and the students come up with their own essay title, which is like something that they choose to do themselves, which I think is like, because I think back in me being 18 and like thinking about like trying to make my own essay title, I don't know if I would have been able to do that, but I probably could have done, because all of our students think of like really fascinating really fascinating essay questions, and they usually tackle them like really well, and lots of like interesting ideas, probably more interesting ideas than I could come up with, like trying to just give them, my own essay questions or like a list of essay questions.
Can I just come back on that? Sorry but yeah, essay and project sound quite different. So I can imagine those two being two different, possibly equitable tasks. I mean, a report being different to a theoretical essay, and perhaps that would be easier to compare, both probably written finally, perhaps with elements of also oral.
Yep. So I think we're pretty much at the end. If anybody wants to add other stuff, like, I'm honestly so happy with all the responses. This is exactly what I was looking for, and this is like some of the ideas that have been also going in my head in terms of like concerns. But what I've attached is like a reading list or like a reference list as well, and also some additional reading in case anybody is interested. And I think for me, I think the thing that I've taken most out of it is just this idea of, are we unnecessarily disadvantaging our students? And if so, what steps can we take to try to minimise that? Choice of assessment could be one of them, but in this whole conference, there has been lots of other ideas that I think could also be used to try to help that. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening to this. Cheers.